Hello, Austin Berkland here of the Armchair Illini podcast. And boy, do we have some questions that need to be answered by this Illini football team. We have a lot of concerns that need to be addressed from this Illini football team. I just got done rewatching the Illinois-Indiana massacre. I wouldn't even call it a game. That was a straight massacre from start to finish. You look at the physicality, I thought Illinois would have that in the bag. And hand up apologies to the Indiana Hoosiers, but they addressed the athleticism concerns that I had about the Hoosiers. They addressed the physicality concerns that I had about the Hoosiers, and they manhandled, they punked the Illini from start to finish. The offensive line of the Illini was simply atrocious. I thought a team returning 5 offensive linemen would be a little bit better, would be a little bit stronger, would just control the game in a way that you can win football games. And they clearly did not. It was Indiana getting whatever they wanted from Luke Altmaier. They were sacking him. They were rushing him. Every third down and long, I closed one eye and was like, this is going to end up terribly. And more than likely, it ended up pretty terribly. And on top of that, to have Curt Cignetti say that you broke the Illini's will was very, very disheartening. And I couldn't even argue against it. That's the bad part about a blowout like this. I couldn't say, oh, well, you had penalty calls here, and here, and that's why Indiana, you won by 7 to 10 points. No, this was Illinois getting dominated from start to finish. Offensive line was concern number one. The running game amounted to very little for the Illini. Then you go on the opposite side of the ball where Fernando Mendoza and those wide receivers were pretty much just dominating the point of attack and press coverage and all of that. And there was no stopping these wide receivers from Indiana. Kudos to the Indiana wide receiver room. Kudos to that coach. Kudos to that whole organization right now that is Indiana. I thought it was a one-year kind of fluke with the easy schedule that Indiana had last year. I think I'm proven otherwise here. Indiana is going probably back to the college football playoff. If not, they are going to be the Citrus Bowl representative, be that final team around that bubble, maybe miss it just because they do have a tougher schedule, but they checked a lot of boxes in the game last night. And you look at Illinois, where do they come into play now? You have a tough game against USC in homecoming this Saturday. You have Ohio State on the schedule. You have Washington at Seattle. This is going to get worse before it gets better. This might be an 8-win team. This might be a 7-win team. You have some opponents that you can win easily in Northwestern, Purdue, and we'll see what Maryland is by November. Very talented freshman quarterback. They do really well early season every single year under Mike Locksley, but then they fall under the pressure. But going back to that Illini secondary, this is a thin group at the moment. This is a group that has a ton of injuries, a ton of inexperience, and the depth is extremely lacking. It's tested at the moment, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned what the wide receiver rooms of these Big Ten universities are going to do to this Illini secondary if they can't get healthy quickly. And it's not looking promising for Xavier Scott. Brett Bielema said he's going to have an announcement soon about his status, and I don't think you announced, hey, magically Xavier Scott's coming back. It's mostly like, hey, Xavier Scott probably out for the year or close to it. If things go right, maybe he can play in a final game of the season. This is very disheartening. I was on the full-on college football playoff bandwagon, and right now it's looking very, very difficult to envision a world where that's possible. The committee's always going to look at this game, the drubbing that you took from Indiana, and now you have Indiana ahead of you permanently, at least until they lose 3 or 4 games and something miraculous happens in that Illinois locker room where they figure some things out. I mean, this offensive line group, you look at the depth there, and there's very little depth in that offensive line room at this current moment. And I thought with Brett Bielema, I thought that was going to be one of his calling cards was, hey, don't worry, we're going to have a strong offensive line, strong running game every single year. And the offensive line has kind of left a little bit too desired, other than the likes of a J.C. Davis. It's been very frustrating at times, this offensive line room. And then the special teams, also not great. Not great for the Illini. I'm very concerned. I think the expectations are sky high for this program, and when you have a loss like that, it's tough not to have all of that crater on top of itself. I mean, Illinois has lost some big blowout games in the past. I mean, look at Iowa back in the day. It was, 63-0? At least in that moment, you weren't really a strong contender for anything. You were just trying to find your footing as a program. When you are the number 9 team in the country, you can't have a loss like that. You can't have that be on your resume if you're Brett Bielema. There was a bunch of unpreparedness in that game. There was a bunch of weakness shown in that game, both mentally and physically, and now it's up to these captains to really showcase that they have what it takes to build this locker room back up, because that can be a true confidence buster. That can be a game where you question everything about yourself, your organization, and it's scary times in Champaign. In a season that we thought would be extremely special, still could be, but it makes it a lot more difficult when you have a loss like that. Again, if you lose by 10, you lose by 17 even, you can say, hey, tough environment. You played in Bloomington, Indiana. They treated this game like it was their Super Bowl. First-ranked opponent between Illinois and Indiana since 1950, and Indiana was hyped for it. But that showed me today that there were very little answers for Curt Cignetti and that Indiana football program by Brett Bielema, by Aaron Henry, by Barry Lunny Jr., by Bart Miller. The entire staff is on notice right now, and I think that's a very concerning thing in what should have been a really, really great year. Again, it can be, but it makes it a lot more difficult after a loss like that. Now you look to a game against USC, where before the Indiana game kicked off, you were announced that Big Noon Kickoff is coming to Champaign, and there was some hype there with a potentially undefeated USC program, a potentially undefeated Illinois program, and you had USC beat Michigan State. You have Illinois lose very, very big to this Indiana Hoosier program, and I apologize to Hoosier fans. I apologize to Curt Cignetti. I didn't know your game was like that. I'll say that. So kudos to you guys over in Indiana. I hate it, but you guys are legit. And Illinois has proven that Duke game just wasn't all that. So a lot to learn. Like, share, and subscribe to Armchair Illini on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Go to armchairillini.com for all written Illini needs. And I'll be back this week with a couple of guests to kind of see where Illinois goes from here and preview the USC game. And we'll figure out what goes on with this Illini football program. We'll see what kind of intensity and energy that this program possesses. This is a big week, probably the biggest week of the Brett Bielema tenure that we've ever seen, is what's going to happen against this USC program. So we'll see what happens. ILL, I and I.